What if I told you that your meals could fuel stress or fight it? The food that you eat sends powerful signals to your nervous system, and the difference can either be afternoon meltdown or calm. Let's talk about that. So, welcome back. And if you're new here, I'm Dr. Anjali, the founder of Back in Balance. And this month, we've been exploring the functional side of your health. So, your gut, hormones, and nutrition. So, today we'll be talking about something that affects every single one of us every single day, and that's food. And now, when most people think about food, they think about the calories, the weight they may gain, or they're trying to lose. Maybe they're trying to eat clean. And I want you to consider this instead. Food is information for our nervous system. So every bite that you eat either tells your brain you're safe, steady, and nourished, or that you're unstable, stressed, and on alert. So if you've ever noticed your anxiety spike after sugar, or that your afternoon crash that you experienced after a coffee or a pastry or maybe both, or your kids are melting down right after snack time, that's not just coincidence. That's your nervous system responding to the food signal. So let me tell you about a dad I worked with. We talk a lot about our moms and trying to conceive moms, but one of the dads we worked with, let's call him Rob. He was 42, he was working long hours, and his stress was just out of control. He drank 2 coffees before 10 a.m. He would often skip his lunch and he would grab whatever was easiest around 3 p.m. And he thought the issue was work stress, right? We've been so trained to think of stress as being that mental emotional stress that he thought everything was work stress. And we started to do a deeper dive, and his blood sugar was really just spiking and crashing all day long. And his food choices were literally fueling his stress response. So once we started to stabilize his meals, that meant having more protein at breakfast, having more balanced snacks, his nervous system started to calm down. Now, his stress didn't disappear. His mental stress was actually relatively the same, but his resilience and his capacity and bandwidth changed significantly. So, let's talk a little bit about this food and stress loop, because here's what's happening physiologically. With blood sugar spikes, that results in a stress spike. So, when blood sugar rises too quickly, cortisol and adrenaline jump in. And that can be felt like things like anxiety, jitters, or even having brain fog. Or when you crash, that can be fatigue or irritability, because when your blood sugar plummets, your nervous system interprets it as danger. So that starts to cue things like fatigue or shakiness or short tempers. And women over the age of 35, hormonal changes, especially shifts in progesterone and estrogen, can make you much more sensitive to blood sugar swings. And so that's why things like stress or PMS symptoms or perimenopausal symptoms can start to feel much more intense. So if you've been feeling like you're on this emotional roller coaster, it may not just be the mental emotional stress. It may actually be nutritional stress impacting your bandwidth and your resilience. So here are some key nutrients to consider to build some resilience into your system very soon, even today. So, one of the first things that I like to talk about is magnesium. This is found in leafy greens, in nuts, and seeds. And this is really helpful at calming the nervous system and your muscles in a really powerful way. So, a lot of times, because we've gotten so used to a certain level of stress, it feels like we're able to adapt and respond to the stress, which our body is adapting and compensating for the various stresses all the time. But if we can introduce some minerals back into our body, particularly the magnesium, that can be really restorative for our nervous system and it can allow the muscles to actually relax. So if you find yourself always being tense, right? If you are always on high alert, if somebody opens a door and you jump out of your seat because you get startled really easily, or if you've ever gotten a massage or been to the chiropractor and they say like, wow, your muscles are just really tight. Yes, it could be hydration. Certainly hydration plays a large role in how our muscles are functioning, but it could also be that we are mineral deficient, particularly magnesium deficient. So, increasing your magnesium, I have a link for one of my favorite magnesium supplements below, but that can be a really great way to help calm the nervous system. One sign that you might be getting too much magnesium is that if you start to notice that your bowels are getting loose or they're not as formed, then it might be time to back off a little bit on the magnesium, or it might be requiring a different form of magnesium. However, I would find for most people, especially those who feel like they're carrying the stress in their musculature, having a really hard time relaxing or falling asleep or noticing kind of restlessness, especially when it comes to trying to get rest at night, it can be supported by potentially increasing your magnesium intake. The other is to look at your B vitamins, right? And it doesn't have to be from supplements, but I have one of my favorite ones linked below as well. This can be from whole grains. This could be from eggs or legumes because our adrenal glands will burn through B vitamins really fast under periods of stress. And if we are chronically stressed, then we are constantly burning through it potentially faster than you might be ingesting it. And so, looking at first, are you ingesting enough of the B vitamins through your food sources? It might be required to actually supplement it as well, depending on how much you're getting through your food and what the needs are for your body. I don't think supplements replace food by any means, so I don't think you could just take the pills and then not eat the food. I do think that having the food and potentially supplementing it with supplements can be really helpful to support your B vitamin levels as well. Looking at your omega 3s, right? From food sources that can be from fish or flax seeds or walnuts, because omega 3s will really help to lower the inflammation and to improve brain function. So, particularly if most of your food or much of your food comes from prepackaged foods or processed foods, or if you're eating out a fair amount, having omega 3s increased through your diet, again, similarly to the magnesium and B vitamins, it might be that we need to supplement it as well, and having high quality of omega 3s, whether it's from your food and or from supplements. We want to make sure that it's high quality, that your body is able to break down those fats. We talked about this in the first week of this month, all about fat digestion, but we want to make sure that we are ingesting enough omega 3s as well as breaking it down to help really reduce the inflammation in our body. One of the other ways, the kind of the hot topic at the moment for many people is protein intake. So, having adequate protein in our day, it doesn't matter if you're vegetarian, vegan, omnivore, herbivore, carnivore, whatever you eat, it just might require planning regardless of what your day to day looks like, but having adequate protein to actually allow for repair of cells and rest for cells, right? Rest for our bodies, rest for our nervous system starts with having adequate protein. There's different schools of thought. I have a protein tracker linked below as well. If you want to get a sense of where you might be in terms of your protein intake currently, but having protein throughout the day, so not just in one meal, but having it throughout the day can really help to stabilize your blood sugar and cortisol levels. So, ideally, starting your day within 30 to 60 minutes of waking up, having some source of protein, even if that means having some food, if that means having some bone broth, having some juicing, some vegetables, whatever that looks like for you, having some protein to kick off the day. And then we talked about this, I think last week or the week before, we talked about having some protein before bed, potentially with some fiber to allow for deeper restoration as well at night. And then throughout the day, especially if you tend to reach for the caffeine, the sugar, whatever that might look like to get through the afternoon, having more protein with your lunch might hold you over more appropriately, more efficiently until it gets to be closer to dinner time. And having complex carbs, right? So thinking about having the beans, the vegetables, the fiber, the quinoa, the oats, because these are sources of slow glucose release rather than the fast spikes. So if you're tending to eat a lot of, even if it's complex carbs of fruit or high sugar, high glucose index foods, then that can also be, I mean, it's still better than the refined sugars, but it can still be too much for the body in terms of that quick release. So if you're having predominantly fruits more than vegetables, this might be something to consider is maybe trying to ideally switch the balance so that it's like two-thirds vegetables and one-third fruits, but having the fiber from the grains also can be really impactful for blood sugar stability. So these aren't necessarily just thinking about eating superfoods. These are really the anchors for your nervous system to help regulate that feeling of safety and satiety in your bodies. Some resets that you can consider with your family is a breakfast reset. So I know cereal is so convenient in the mornings, but instead of having cereal, maybe trying to have some oatmeal with some nut butter or some nut butter alternative and some fruits or some pumpkin seeds or some protein powder added to that to help create a little bit more balance for your children, for yourself in the morning. Or maybe having some yogurt with some nuts and fruit to have that protein and that fiber for more stability. A snack swap might be trying to have fruit and nut butter, or we talked about, I often will take hummus and veggies for my kids, or even a hard boiled egg. But the favorite one is this energy bite. So I just put protein powder, I put a nut butter, some honey, and depending on the mood for when we're making it, we'll either put some rolled oats in it, some chia seeds, some shredded coconut, some chocolate chips, whatever it looks like, so that can be the support for the kids and myself, my husband, whatever we need to help get us through that short period of I need food now, and rather than going and reaching for some less healthy version, that way I know we're getting the protein, we're getting the honey, so it's not refined sugar, and it tides us over until we can get to our next meal. It might be more batch prepping, right? So whether that means making more soup or having overnight oats in the fridge or the energy bites, it takes 10 minutes to make them. I make a whole batch that can last for several days. So this can be a really easy, calming way to have foods ready to go. And remember, kids need the same type of stability because their tantrums or the hangry sensations or the expressions of that are often related to blood sugar swings, right? If your children are like my children, sometimes they say that I didn't have enough time to eat during lunch because they were too busy playing and too busy doing all the other things. And so they may not actually eat the food when they're supposed to eat the food. So trying to make sure that they have that at pickup can be really helpful. And these simple swaps can really make a huge difference. Again, you don't need to overhaul everything. Start with one swap. Maybe try that for a few days and then try adding in a different swap. Maybe it's the breakfast or the after school snack. And just watch how your energy, how your kids' energy, and your family's mood starts to shift. And why this matters so much, particularly after the age of 35, is that nutrition is one of the most powerful ways to buffer our stress because we can't always control our workout. We can't predict what our kids' sleep is going to be like. And we certainly can't predict life's curveballs, but we can influence the signals that is sent to our nervous system through our food. So that signal, whether it's a feeling of safety or a feeling of stress, is really what ripples into our hormones, your fertility abilities, your energy, and your family's rhythm. So here's the takeaway. Food isn't just fuel. It's really the communication for your body to your brain to your body. So every plate is a reset opportunity. It's a chance for you to tell your body, you are supported, you can reset, and you can handle the stress with more resilience. And I'm going to help you. So, if you want help putting this into practice, we've put together a food symptom tracker and some sample meal ideas in this month's Functional Resilience Guide. It's designed for women over 35 who are really trying to navigate stress, hormones, and family rhythms. So you can download all of it with the link below. Thanks so much for listening. And next week, we'll be wrapping up as we do a deep dive into the gut brain connection. See you next week.